Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and today's topic of the day is, well, yet another Superstar Spotlight. This is probably the fourth one, or fifth I've done now since I started this whole series. So it's a series within a series, if you catch my drift. Today's feature is the one and only Shawn Stasiak, second-generation star, son of the former WWE champion Stan, the Man Stasiak. Shawn Stasiak, wow, what an interesting career. It wasn't the longest career ever, but certainly did a lot in a short amount of time. But when I say a lot, I'm not talking about championships and rising to the top, rising to the cream of the crop. I'm talking about some things that are kind of unconventional. He got pushed in unconventional sort of ways, and maybe de-pushed is probably the better terminology we should be using here. So Shawn Stasiak, he'd been wrestling since 1996, I want to say. He started out in Dory Funk's wrestling promotion down in Amarillo, Texas, and it was Dory Funk Jr. he was trained by. He got picked up by the World Wrestling Federation in the spring of 1999. He might have come a little bit before that to train in, HWA. I think it was the Heartland Wrestling Association, where guys like Steve Bradley trained at the time. Pardon me. And after training, he finally debuted. It was April or May, the spring of '99, on an episode of Heat, saving PMS, the Pretty Mean Sisters. There was a stable, Terry Runnels and Jacqueline, and later Ryan Shamrock. He was saving the Pretty Mean Sisters from an attack, I believe, from Prince Albert and Draws, on an episode of Heat. And he was just some guy wearing, tight blue jeans, and he had frosted tips, and, a whole late 90s, 2000 look. So Shawn Stasiak was actually renamed as Meat, believe it or not, M-E-A-T, Meat. I loved when the ring announcers would introduce him. Tony Chimmel weighing 274 pounds, Meat! Or Howard Finkel, weighing 271 pounds, Meat! Meat was the boy toy male associate of PMS's because, they got tired of being cheated by other men such as D'Lo Brown and Mark Henry, and they had that failed miscarriage angle, which nowadays would totally not fly in this culture, cancel culture, if you will. It wasn't appropriate to begin with back then, and I was only 10 watching it, so I didn't understand the whole concept of miscarriage, but it's definitely not something you ever want to joke about. It's totally not funny. Not a great concept to make light of. So anyways, they got tired of being around, all these other males on the roster, so they wanted somebody that they could actually take control of, and Meat was just the man for the job. Meat is best known for getting so exhausted before his matches after being tired out due to hours and hours of sex with Terry Runnels. Or at least that was what the character was, Whenever they wanted him to have sex with them, he should be able to just turn it on right there. Right then and there. No exceptions. So by the time the intercourse was over and done with, Terry would ask him to come to the ring, and he'd be smeared with lipstick all over his face and his body and his legs, whatever. He had lipstick smeared all over him. His hair was kind of disheveled. Somebody who looks like they just had sex in the closet or something. So he'd walk to the ring all fatigued, no energy. Sometimes they'd focus in on his tights, his trunks. They're supposed to resemble underwear, and it said Meat on it instead of like Gap or whatever. And he was supposed to have a boner, or maybe prematurely ejaculated. I'm not really sure. I haven't really delved down in the whole meat concept, but I get where this is going. Certainly at 10 years old, I thought it was hilarious, and I didn't totally understand everything then, but I think I kind of do now, just because all the sexual overtones with the gimmick really drive it home. So, oh my God. Yes, so Meat basically just did their dirty work. Whatever PMS wanted, Meat did for them. So he picked up a slew of victories over guys like Draws, Prince Albert, Brian Christopher, Scott Taylor early on, and then he'd start losing to guys like Godfather, D'Lo Brown, Kane, Big Boss Man, to name a few, some more upper mid-carders, so to speak. And so the character we obviously knew was not going to evolve. It was just going to be at a standstill. That's it for Meat. In fact, one anecdote I can remember, he debuted on an episode of Shotgun Saturday Night, May of '99. My brother calls me into his room and he's watching Shotgun. It's like 10, 11 o'clock at night on New York 55. Hey, Harry, new wrestler, Meat! It was just a guy in black semi-trunks, black short trunks, and black knee pads, black boots, black wrist tape, nothing more to him. He didn't have the whole lipstick shtick. He wasn't even doing the exhausted from sex shtick. So he had this victory against Draws. I'm like, okay, his name's Meat. It's a funny-ass name, but what else more is there to him? So I didn't think much of it, until the character got to develop a little bit. There was a match that was supposed to take place on Raw in June of '99 between Meat and one Harry Beaver Cleavage. See where Vince Russo's going with these names in the Attitude Era, how overly sexualized they are? Harry Beaver Cleavage was a play on the 1950s sitcom Leave It to Beaver. It was basically Chaz Warrington, headbanger Mosh, dressed as supposed to be a little boy, and his girlfriend at the time, Mariana Komlos, who actually unfortunately passed away in 2004. Mariana was playing Mrs. Cleavage, like June Cleaver in the Leave It to Beaver series. But it was a lot of sexual innuendos, as you could imagine. He came out in black and white film, and he had that one match against Christian. Then he was supposed to face Meat a few weeks later, and he broke character infamously. This is the one time he broke kayfabe during a promo, and I think that was actually a work shoot. That was supposed to happen. They wanted to, sort of show you this behind-the-scenes stuff and what it's like. They wanted to expose the business a little more in the Attitude Era, and I'm not sure Vince McMahon really appreciated that, and neither did a lot of fans. So, Michael Cole or Kevin Kelly, whoever's interviewing that night on Raw, says, "So, Beaver Cleavage, what do you think about your match tonight against Meat?" "I have to go face a guy named Meat? How ridiculous is this?" And he takes off his hat. "I can't do this." Producer backstage yells, "Chaz, we're live! Chaz!" Chaz walks off stage. That's the last we see of Beaver Cleavage. Then he becomes his own self, just Chaz, just a kid from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Chaz was a womanizer, so to speak, but enough about Chaz. Meat and Chaz actually had a few matches together over the summer of '99. Chaz had Mariana in his corner, and Meat had Terry and Jacqueline, later just Terry. I think Jacqueline left the group, thus disbanding PMS. Ryan Shamrock had already left the company by that point, went on to become Symphony to the Maestro in WCW that summer. So eventually Meat was caught cheating with Mariana on GTV, and that was the end of Terry and Meat. Finally, he decided to do away with the character and said, "My name is not Meat, it's Shawn Stasiak." Nobody had any idea at the time, and it's not like Stan the Man Stasiak was a big name back in the late 60s, early 70s. He was the world champion all of 9 days, Stan Stasiak was, so it's not like he had a legendary father. He did, but in a sense, he didn't, because, it's not like The Rock with his father, Rocky Johnson, or, somebody like Joe Hennig with his dad, Kurt Hennig. Legendary fathers we're talking here. Or Ted DiBiase Jr., Ted DiBiase Sr., whatever. You get the point. So, Shawn Stasiak just mostly was saddled on Metal or Jacked, depending on which market you were in. Also on Heat, so you didn't really see him on the main shows, Raw or SmackDown. But the fall of '99, he had one last match I can remember. He lost to a debuting Kurt Angle at the Survivor Series that year. They needed an opponent for Kurt, someone to put Kurt over, and Shawn Stasiak was just the man to do it. And that was the first time we were introduced to Stan the Man Stasiak, at least I was. Then Kurt beat him in his debut match, as well he should have, and cut that promo, "You don't boo Olympic gold medalists," in Detroit. And they were going to keep Kurt a babyface, but that's when they knew they had to turn him heel because of the heat he was getting, which was unexpected. So, I think that was pretty much it for Shawn Stasiak in his first run with the WWF. He was released in December of 1999 for recording a heated conversation between British Bulldog and Steve Blackman on his tape recorder. Remember those old tape recorders? Doctors used to use them to give their reports. Start the tape, it records, and then you stop it and then play it back. So he did that, but it was supposed to be a joke. It was meant as a joke, but you actually aren't allowed to do that backstage. It's just an invasion of privacy, really. I would be pissed off if somebody did that to me. I'm having a private conversation with someone, they sneak up on me with a tape recorder, or whatever device they use, voice memo now on your phone, your iPhone, whatever. But, yeah, he knew it was wrong and shouldn't have done it, so that was it for him in his first run. But he'll be back. Just you wait and see. Then he goes to WCW in like January 2000. He started out in this group with Chuck Palumbo, The Perfect Event. They were former WCW Tag Team Champions together, maybe on more than one occasion. Eventually that group morphed into the Natural Born Thrillers. There were like 5 or 6 guys in that group. You had Shawn Stasiak, Chuck Palumbo, Sean O'Hare, Mark Jindrak, Mike Sanders and Reno. I think that was them. And I haven't watched the Natural Born Thrillers in a long time, or WCW 2000 for that matter. It's hilarious to go back and watch because of how shitty the product was getting around that time. But the action was actually good. Storylines were subpar, but overall it was just shitty quality as far as what they were presenting on screen. And the big picture stuff. So Vince Russo really hurt that, I have to say. So he eventually became the Mecca of manhood. If you remember 2001, it was a month, that same month they were closing down WCW, March 2001. He came out with these pink tights and it said Mecca on the back in big letters, MECCA. And the Mecca of manhood just meant he embodied every quality of manhood, or whatever one's idea of manhood is supposed to be. He aligned himself with Miss Hancock, better known as Stacy Keibler. Then the company went out of business. It was bought out by Vince McMahon. And then that leads us to the Invasion, the summer of 2001. Both Shawn Stasiak and Stacy Keibler's contracts were picked up by the World Wrestling Federation. He became a member of the Alliance, WCW and ECW's faction. But he wasn't treated the same. I don't think he was given any special treatment, or at least not in this second run with the company. They turned him into a complete fool, a baboon of some sort, complete idiot, rather. He was crashing into walls. He'd run into a statue in Regal's office, and fall back. If you're going to get known for that, then there's no upward mobility. I mean, it's just a comedy shtick, that's all it is. He was also trying to impress the Alliance leader, Stone Cold Steve Austin, in more ways than one. Of course, that didn't work out too well. And he was pretty much just comic foil, comic relief. And it's sad because he could actually showcase a lot more, Shawn Stasiak can. And there were discussions on the internet back in the day, if John Cena hadn't come around, this guy could have actually been the John Cena. Not the next John Cena, but the John Cena instead of John Felix Anthony Cena, who ended up getting that run. Here we are 25 years later talking about it. He had the look. He had the charisma. He had that it factor, or so it seemed. But again, it kind of goes back to a lot of other people I've talked about. Sometimes presentations aren't always what they seem at first glance. Somebody could nail it with vignettes because vignettes are taped and edited. They could do great with backstage promos, but when push comes to shove, and when it's showtime and it's go time and you're in that ring talking and you can't cut a promo for shit, well, that's going to doom your career. That's just going to put you on a downward spiral and almost to the point of no return. That's what it felt like with Shawn Stasiak. He was first eliminated in a lot of battle royals because he kept charging at opponents that he obviously couldn't take down on his own. I think eventually Stacy left him for the Dudley Boys. I don't know how she got roped with the Dudley Boys, to be honest, so that's another story for another day. Like I said, this career doesn't last too long, so there's really not that much more to talk about here. Eventually, after the Invasion ended at Survivor Series 2001, he's kayfabe fired, but Shawn Stasiak did compete at house shows and in dark matches on various Raw and SmackDown tapings. Pardon me. When he was drafted to Raw in the very first WWE draft in March 2002, and then April 2002 it took effect. So it was right at the tail end of March, the very beginning of April. Shawn Stasiak reappeared. He had a few wins on Heat, no less. He won the Hardcore Championship multiple occasions, as did a lot of lower card guys on Raw, right before the belt was abandoned for good. He then became this gimmick of Planet Stasiak. And Planet Stasiak was a guy from another planet, as one would imagine. Shawn claimed he heard voices in his head. Not Randy Orton's voices in that famous song by Rev Theory, by the way. Shawn heard voices in his head. He talked to himself in rhymes. Kind of reminds me of Stardust, what Stardust would become a little ways down the road. And he acted comically insane. Like he'd be competing in matches, but would deliberately lose them. He'd go for a cover. The ref would cover 1, 2, and Shawn would break the count. Oh, I'm hearing something in my head. It's all these voices going off. I'm seeing things, hearing things. Uh-oh. And so that's enough for the opponent to take advantage of the distraction and to roll up Shawn for the 3 count, Stasiak. And it wasn't much longer after that he'd be released from his WWE contract for the second time in September of 2002. Basically, there was just no upward mobility to speak of, if you ask me. And I think basically, he'd already made his mark, and the damage was already done, sadly. So that was it for Stasiak and World Wrestling Entertainment. He milled around for a while on the independent circuit. In like 2007, he had some big matches because people hadn't heard about what he was doing since that time. So a lot of people were curious, as was myself. He finally retired from professional wrestling for good in 2010. And then it was during that time he actually became a chiropractor. So he became a doctor. He went back to school, got his PhD, and he's a chiropractor in Plano, Texas. This is Dr. Shawn Stipich. Stipich is his real name, as was his dad's real last name, Stipich, Stipich. And this is a picture of him here. Here's our chiropractor. This guy was once known as Meat as a wrestler. Dr. Shawn Stipich. Get a better view here. Sorry, the glare is not so great. If I could just turn this a little bit. There we go. He's a good-looking guy. See, that totally could have been the next John Cena, but no, WWE had other plans, so forget that. But yeah, he's doing a lot of great work, and he also does like he's also a motivational speaker part-time. He's married and has 2 kids, I believe. So he's actually doing all right for himself. And he'd made some inklings in some shoot interviews. He's done some shoot interviews here and there, not as many. He doesn't need the money, obviously, but he'll do it just as a career retrospective for the fans anyways. And he's interested in coming back for maybe one more run if he feels like he's ready enough to do it. But I think he's got to be in his mid-50s. How old is Shawn Stasiak now? Let me look it up. Usually I have this information ready to go, but I wanted to talk about other things besides his age. He's 55 years old. He was born in July of 1970. So at 55, he very well could make a comeback, but it wouldn't be a long one. He seems like one of those guys who has a great head on their shoulders and doesn't want to do anything that's going to cause any further risk or further damage or injury. I think he had some neck issues. I think that might have led to why he became a chiropractor in the first place, and neck injuries all coincide with CTE and concussions. So I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised if he and Christopher Nowinski ever got together and discussed these things, because there'd be a lot to talk about between neck problems and brain injuries, head injuries, whatever. There's definitely a lot of parallels between the two. Too many to describe here. But you see, the wrestling world can be kind of small in ways. As big as it is, it's a small world too, because people can move on to different things and then eventually come back to it and, find other things they like along the way. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a short career, so it doesn't leave for a very long video today, but I wanted to get at least one more superstar spotlight in before the year ends, and we'll think of some other things. There's not much time left in the year, but we'll keep the show going into the new year, and hopefully much longer there too ever after. So there you have it. This has been another great edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling. Until next time, everybody, bye-bye.